Hi, good evening. Welcome to AgileTD after work. Today is a little bit late in Central Europe. It's about 9 o'clock in the night. And in India, it's midnight or more than midnight, already the next day. But in Seattle, it's quite early in the morning. And tonight or today, it depends on where you are, we have Jason Arbon with us. He's talking about AI, of course. And so let's bring him to the front. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for reaching out. Doing good. And what do you mean it has to be AI? Maybe we should just not talk about AI.
Of course not. Of course not. I'm sorry for that.
It's just marketing anyway. Okay.
I'm sorry for that. So, Jason, who are you?
So I'm Jason Arbon. I'm a software tester. I've been my whole life super fascinated with software quality and then kind of testing as a means to figure out what quality is and help ensure it. So I worked at a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different teams, and today I'm relevant. I've worked on a bunch of different roles, so I'm not totally naive. And I work today. I'm CEO at testers.ai, and like you said, focusing on AI and software testing. Before it was cool, and after it's a fad. And but we just build little software testing agents that can look at a web page and find bugs, generate test cases, and execute them. Like all of that sounds a little bit like testing, and that's what we focus on at testers.ai. And I'm just happy to share what I've learned, and because I live this day in and day out, so I'm happy to share what I think and what might be helpful to people in this space.
Okay, that's nice. So this is your evening. So enjoy the audience. Okay, I will go to the back side and you can present and kill us.
All right, cool. And real quick, how's my hair?
It's nice. It's nice.
Okay.
It's better than mine. Better than mine.
All right. Cool.
Enjoy.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. So let's talk about surviving the AI apocalypse. So a lot of people are worried about this, and we'll talk about the realities of it. The shortcut is, if you don't have time or patience, is that it's real and you should be concerned. And at the end, there's actually very practical tips on how to things you can actually do to survive this transition in the incorporation of AI into our world. So thanks again for the invite, and I want to make sure everybody knows that the Agile Testing Days conference is coming up in November, and people just always talk about that more often when the conference isn't running, just about how good the community is and how interesting it is, and the people they've met there. And if I can, I'll try to get there. I don't know. I have to check with the family, but appreciate this opportunity, and thanks to Jose or Pepe for inviting me to chat and share with you guys today. I also realized when I was thinking about Agile Testing Days, I did write a book that no one knows about or cares, but it was about app quality, and it's secrets for Agile App Teams. So I was thinking about Agile, it made me think about it. But if you want a free PDF, just because I invested the time already, sunk costs, I'll just share a PDF with you. But it's based on App Store analytics. We looked at all the App Store reviews and figured out what do people care about, what do they not care about, and how to resolve kind of all those issues from a testing perspective. So I hate to break the news to you, but this thing called AI is here, and it's like there's an explosion's gone off, right? And people are worried about it. People are stressed about it. And if you aren't worried and stressed about it, I highly recommend that you do worry a little bit and stress about it. One of the funniest things I was just chatting with Jose about is that after I talk with people, usually they'll give a presentation or they wrote a cool article on LinkedIn about how they're in control and they're confident in this new AI world, and they got a new tool or they've tried something and it works and they're all confident. Offline, guess what they say to me? I'll just share this with you. In the last 6 months, it's been happening a lot. They asked me, how much time do I have left? They literally just genuinely ask me that question as if I know. And then they go, what should I do? What do I do after this? So I'll share some of what I've been, really this is just a collection of those things I've been talking with people about in the background. And I figured it'd be useful for everyone to kind of hear. So there is the case that you're a unicorn, to be clear. A lot of testers think that they're just magical and they're unique, and there's not very many unicorns, but a lot of them, these unicorns, think that they're smarter than the AI. By the way, they're smarter than the people that are billionaires that are making the AI, and they're kind of cynics and saying, oh, it's just all marketing, and and they like to point out all the things that it can't do, right? But that list is getting shorter and changing the things it can't do, and they're not really necessarily comparing it against themselves because they don't really want to know. But we'll get into that. But unless you're a magical unicorn, and if you are, just maybe the rest of the slides will just upset you, or maybe you'll find it entertaining. But odds are you're probably not that unicorn. So the real data in the last kind of month, a lot of this stuff's been coming out. And realize it's that AI is going to take over not only a lot of white collar jobs, but it's going to take over a lot of and really change and impact software engineering. And I think we've just been lucky in QA because QA is always a year or two behind engineers. But it's going to impact QA, I think, more than it even does software engineers. And realize though, people can say this is marketing or whatever. It's not in their interest to really say this. Because it scares people, wakes up regulators, concerns their own workforces. Like there's a lot of stuff with Microsoft the last few weeks. Everybody's worried they laid off people because AI is doing their work, which is not true. But a lot of people fell for that, and so it's not in their interest to even say these things, and they're saying it. I think it's partly genuinely. I think it's part of a moral obligation. And in a similar vein, I mean, I'm not one of these people, but I feel an obligation to share as much as I do about it because what I see concerns me, and I think people need to pay attention. So for testers, folks that are on the call that are they're software testers and haven't done a lot of development, or if you haven't used the new IDEs, well, this is the way developers work, right? They have this application, and then there's code on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is an agent that they talk to. This is like the new stuff. So if you've heard of Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf, VS Code, these things, you have this agent on the right-hand side that you can talk to, and you can say, hey, instead of writing the code yourself, you talk to the agent and say, add this function or add a button that does this. And the AI goes and tries to do that, and it just edits the code for them. So there's everything demystified. But this is what developers are looking at. And it's pretty amazing. Right. And it's one of the fastest growing products, to be clear, like in history. I think faster than ChatGPT, maybe even. And even in valuation, like in 6+ months, these things have gone to billions of dollars in valuation, and these tools, and millions of developers are using them already, like millions. So it's probably not a fad. And I know I personally find a ton of value in it. It really accelerates my work. But this is how engineers are working. And it's super important for testers. And the reason why is this. So while I was using the IDE, using Cursor, and I made some code changes, building a mobile app for fun on a weekend, whatever. I'm a nerd. But it made a change. And then guess what it said, though? Usually it always had said, cool, like I made the code change. And it just, good luck to you. Review the code change. A few weeks ago, it said, okay, cool. You know what? Awesome. I'm going to compile the app. And I'm like, okay, it's going to compile it. And this was an iPhone app. So I wasn't even in Xcode or the tools to build iOS with. So it looked on my machine and found Xcode and then compiled it with Xcode, and then found the simulators, ran the app on the simulator. So it runs it and it says, okay, it compiled, it's actually running, it didn't crash on launch at least, right? I'm going, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's nice to know. And it did it all by itself while I'm watching YouTube in the background. But then it did a creepy thing for a tester. It said, okay, cool. Now I'm going to try to tap because the bug was that if you clicked an article, it didn't open like the URL in a browser tab. But guess what it did? It tried to do it. So it launched the app, and now it tries to test it. It's actually trying to do testing. Like this little AI stuck in the middle of this little application is doing all this stuff and trying to do as much as it can. So guess what it's doing now? Now it's trying to do my work, right? And that's interesting. So, and not even all this stuff is hard coded, right? The AI is doing some reasoning and thinking about what should be done next. It even added some debugging and console logs and stuff to tell whether the click event happened, and then whether or not the browser was launched. So whether we like it or not only is AI helping developers, but AI is trying to start to do testing today. And as of like a few weeks ago, and this is real, and this is today. This is not a year in the future, 6 months, 1 month, 1 week. It happened a few weeks ago. So now this thing called MCP, which doesn't matter, but you can now add to these like testers, like stuff that I work on, and other people. You can, like Selenium, Angie made one for Selenium. You can just type to the AI and say, click this button, right? Or with the stuff I hack on, you can say, yo, AI, test this app for me. And guess what it will do? It'll test it. Like it'll actually launch it, do the things I talked about before, right? It'll look for bugs and generate tests and even execute them, click around and execute them with verification all throughout. But this is happening today. And if it sounds a little bit like what testers do, it's by design. And it's happening today. They can happen all within that developer context. So that developer's window here, that developer didn't have to, first of all, have to ask the AI even to try to do some testing. It didn't have to wait for the build to be made, pushed to some staging directory. They didn't have to send the build over to testers, wait for them to wake up, wait for them to come up with a test plan, ask for requirements or specifications. It just starts testing, right? And it's a pretty amazing world that's happening. I never actually would have been, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would think this wasn't going to be possible for a decade or more. But it's happening today. And then the coolest part here, it's a whole nother tangent, but is, so when the AI testing agents go and test the app and they find bugs, they don't put it in Jira. You want to guess what they do? Like, for those at home, guess what? It actually sends the bugs back into the agent that launched them, the development agent, and that AI says, okay, cool, I will go and try to fix these. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but all that happens even before the developer necessarily even sees the code changes. So we're shifting so far left that developers aren't even involved. We're shipping testing like right to moments after the code change happened, before anything else happens, and immediately kind of self-tests. So we're entering a very new real world, and it's very real. It's happening today, whether people like it or not. So what are testers doing? And I read a lot of LinkedIn, obviously, and talk to a lot of people in the space, go to conferences. I'm not humble bragging about this. This is maybe not the best use of my life, but I've talked and listened to quite a few people, and a lot of testers are actually doing the weirdest thing, because intuitively they know this stuff is actually crazy. Most of them, like, they're concerned about it. They ignore it. Most testers actually go, okay, there's this AI stuff going on, but you know what? I'm going to stay out of it. But during mobile, cloud, internet, all these other kind of transitions and interesting moments in technology and shifts, the testers were like, oh, cool, I can try this, or there's all these new things to test. Testers are just pretending it's not happening. Like, they're really looking the other way. The few testers that are trying to engage the AI have a motive. And this is interesting, and a bias, because they don't want it to work. A lot of these testers are saying, like they use the chat bot and they're like, they ask like a kind of a crazy question, they get a crazy answer, and very edge weird case, like ask a language model how to do math, for example, and they get weird answers. And then they're like, this is just frustrating, I can't use it, it's not trustworthy. But it's funny that all those other people think it's going to replace all these white collar jobs, and they're worth billions. Their company's worth billions. They're seeing what's coming down the pipe, but somehow that tester is smarter than those people, but still can't figure out how to use ChatGPT effectively in their work. This is kind of comical to watch, but it's concerning. I think it's really reflective of the fact of how threatening and concerning this stuff is. So we've talked about it already, but the AI agents are already doing this. They're finding bugs, they can create thousands of tests, execute them, and even report on them. But the AI is here, and it is doing testing already today. This is the worst slide I probably ever made, but it was kind of fun to keep with the theme. And I tried to use AI to blend them, by the way. It did not go well. But what you see here is, if you actually look at the AI, it's here today, and here's a quick example. What the AI is doing, we won't dig into it too deep here, but on the left-hand side is the AI agent telling you what it's doing, what it's trying, and why. But it's created test cases for Google. It's gone in, it's executed a search. Actually, by the way, it logged in, then executes a search. But it can also, very interestingly, not just click around and all that and create test cases, which sounds a lot like testing, but it verifies every single step with reasoning, which is a little bit smarter than most Java Selenium scripts. And then also when it looks at that result page, it can look at it and say, oh, these results look reasonable for that search query, right? It can tell, even measure relevance to a degree. So that's something most testers can't do, and very, very difficult to even program, even if you wanted to. But all that happened fully autonomously. No humans wrote the test cases, executed them, said what the verification steps should be. And I used to test search engines for a living, and it's pretty darn good. It's better than a lot of stuff that myself and my team ever built. But it's real. It's executing today. This is just a fun nerd thing, but you can see it can do lots of different things on lots of different websites, on hundreds and even thousands of websites without human intervention. I think most Selenium Java folks don't even have a demo like this because it would be very difficult to create. So if you look at, so what are testers doing again? They're just doing the same old thing. Even when they see that, they get a peek of it. Even in conversations I have with people, they're like, hey, what's going on with these AI agents you're working on? Guess what they do? They go back and they take like weeks to think about it. And then they just go back and they spend 90% of their time mowing the lawn, right? Checking the crops and seeing them grow slowly. They do their regression test passes. They're still writing a bunch of Java and Selenium, and they're just thinking about things. It's kind of the way the world is today. So an interesting thing I've discovered, I'm embarrassed it took me this long to discover it, but a lot of testers, they actually like the mechanics of it. So why do most testers go into automation? And these are very broad characterizations that won't make me a lot of friends, but we all kind of know it's a reality. Because they want to code. It's an excuse to get paid to code. Their end goal usually isn't to test things or to ensure quality. They like the process of coding and learning how to program, learning APIs, building little frameworks. They like that stuff. They just get paid because it indirectly impacts quality somehow, sometimes. But the reality is that AI is making a lot of that stuff redundant. Like it's actually doing the work and it's doing it more efficiently. But testers really like the mechanics. So they don't really, testers of all people really genuinely don't want to engage AI because it not only doesn't do what they do, but they like doing that stuff. We also have this dichotomy or this split where, ideally the machines are good at some things and the humans are good at different things, and then they should work together, right? Everyone kind of intuitively thinks that should happen. The irony is that the opposite's happening. Like where people like to do the put on headphones and do their manual regression test pass for the week and listen to some new podcasts, or they like to create a lot of new frameworks and new APIs and play with virtual inheritance and some class structure in code and learn some new thing about Java or C#. So, but guess what? The AI is actually better at that code stuff and actually the mass kind of execution of basic tests that humans are doing all the time. And then they're trying to use and expect the AI to be a genius. And they go, oh, it's not a genius. It's not as smart as me. Well, it isn't yet, unless you really know how to use it. But it isn't that. And if you don't want it to be, why do you keep asking it to do all these intelligent things? Let it do the basic stuff. So we're kind of using humans and machines inversely proportional to their value. So what are directors doing? So guess why AI freaks out managers and will disrupt management? Because if it even remotely fulfills its promise, right? Managers and directors, there's two things about them. They like to be managers, right? Like to have people working for them, under them, do reports, have reports and have one-on-ones and circle back kind of conversations. Two things they don't want to do. One is they don't want to go back and be a tester, right? So like if the AI could actually do the work of a team, that means that they're now doing testing work again. Because the bots don't need that much management or that many one-on-ones. And secondly, they're worried about team size. And this is actually happening in the call center world today, where one of the biggest resistances is that you talk to a director at a call center and they go, okay, cool, this works. And they kind of prove it out. It mostly works and it's going to be useful. They don't really care about cost efficiency. But the real concern is they're a manager of a call center or director of a call center. They're not a call center person. So if the AI actually does 90% of the calls, they'll be back on the phone, right? Or worse, they'll be back on the phone dealing with the angriest customers that the AI couldn't handle. So they don't really want to deal with it. So we're seeing that with test directors and managers in the testing world too. And tool vendors. So I'm gonna lose every friend I have on the planet today, but it's in the interest of trying to be helpful and share. Is what do tool vendors do? They have these very complex machines that, low code, no code, a lot of code, whatever it is, and that they sell to people. And they're very complex, and they pride themselves on being very complex, and only they could build such a thing. But in the AI world, what they're doing is they're trying to add AI to it, like in a little piece inside of the flow, right? Or like just front run it with a little bit of generate some user scenarios, and then throw it into their existing infrastructure. This is very predictable. Like we predicted it. Because they have sunk costs and investment in this complex machine, and they want that machine to survive because that's how they make their money. But it really is ending up in most cases to be the lower left quadrant. It would be the worst case because you're making what was a good, well-oiled, fine-tuned machine now chaotic, unpredictable, and you can't debug. You can debug code. You can't debug code that drops into an AI that does something you don't know how it works magically. Can't step the logic of an LLM, and then come back into procedural code. So it's actually kind of makes things even worse and more chaotic, but it's the obvious thing that they should and will try to do. But I worry that and what I'm hearing in the field is I'll be frank, is these things are net negative. You have to learn both things now, not just AI and the machine. It's figure out how they work together and really how they fight together against each other. And then you're accountable for it when it breaks, and then you can't figure out what went wrong. And then lastly, testing services vendors. These are the companies and ISVs that have hundreds or thousands of testers that do a lot of the testing for other companies. And they're the most freaked out right now because what do? They basically have an arbitrage margin on human labor, and so they bring in work so that people can do it, and they charge X plus 25% or something, and they make money on that exchange, right? So if AI comes in, guess what happens to just not forget? You could argue that the profits will go up and the customers will be happier, but the reality is that it's downward pressure on their top line from a business perspective. And in testing world, we don't talk about business a lot, but it's a business, and so they're frankly the least interested in AI actually being useful and helpful, and it's concerning to them. Like I've had many conversations with people who are like going, oh, well, that does what we do. And I'm like, yeah, but it's better, faster, cheaper. And they go like, oh, but our clients won't still pay the same amount, maybe, for that same amount of work, and it disrupts their model, like their whole model. So it's an interesting time even for vendors and ISVs that you think are big companies, lots of revenue, they're doing fine. It's even more disruption to them. So, but meanwhile, back on the surface of the planet after this bomb went off, there's a lot of survivors, and guess what they are? They're kind of renegades. They're or the people that have made the full transition to being AI first and are robotic. But almost all those are developers today. The testers are still hiding underground, and they're worried about what's going to happen. But over 1.5 million developers, and it's actually probably over 2.5. Conservatively, over a million developers have already switched to AI first coding and these tools. Remember, that are doing testing, trying to do testing, and can do testing for them. Interestingly, too, guess what AI does to the developers? I didn't have a slide for this, but I'll say it. I think this is ironically the key message to understand what's going on, is that the AI helps the developers write code, and they sit back and it's magical. It does it. And they feel a little bit threatened because AI is doing what they do. But the worst part is this. The worst part is that those developers, guess what they are now? They're a tester. They have to code review the AI's changes, and they're supposed to test it and see if it even worked, right? So their net productivity may have gone up, 30, 40%, or even 3x in some situations. But now they're a tester. And guess what? They didn't choose the testing career path, right? They don't want to be a tester. So they have a lot of angst to automate that. So these developers are on kind of bleeding edge here and adopting all this AI first. They're actually now super focused on how do I automate all this tedious testing work that I don't want to do and I'm not an expert in. And their first idea is not to call the testing team to come test their stuff. They want to, they're on their couch or they're in their cubicle in the evening, testers have gone home, and they just want the AI to do it. And they expect the AI should be able to do it. But these developers are like these hyper productive developers of the future. If you think about which developers are going to survive this AI apocalypse for them, it's going to be the ones that adopt it, integrate it, and are better, faster, cheaper with it, even if they're doing a lot of testing. But they're more productive, and they're probably going to be the likely survivors of their own transition. And here's a quick peek. It's deliberately fuzzy weird because it's a preview, but and I'll try to make it look like Fallout style. But again, not only can you just ask the AI, hey, test my stuff, there's things coming very soon where you can pick your testers and their expertise. You can pick what parts of the page you want them to test. You can tell what things you want them to check for, what not to bother with. It's like having a whole meeting with a test team, but you can do it with a chat bot and some text boxes, and then say, go test, right? So now we're bringing, and I'm doing this myself even, is bringing that test team into the IDE for that developer, so they have full control over it, and it runs on their machine. The equivalent of a basic but very broad coverage and very inexpensive test team is coming into their development environments. And again, like we showed you earlier, when it finds bugs, you can copy paste them into the right-hand panel, which is the AI bot that does the coding. So you can say, hey, okay, when I get those bugs, I don't put them in Jira and do a triage and wait for everything, or Kanban thing, or wait till next cycle. Guess what I do? Or even talking about the next stand-up, I just copy paste the bugs that it found into the AI development chatbot, and it starts and goes and tries to fix them. And this is demonstrable and happening now. So what do we do? Let's get on to the fun stuff. So I want to say it's real, it's happening now, and there's no avoiding it. And there's a huge market incentive for this to happen. So what do we do as testers? What do we do in the middle of this world? Well, first of all, I've been working with my buddy Phil and his team of testing experts, and we're trying to meld human and machine. How these machines actually work with the humans, and how do we get the best out of the humans and the best out of machines? And so we've come up with this 4-shot process, and we call it shots because that's how you measure AI and see how, when you measure a chatbot, like a 0 shot with a chatbot is you ask a question with no examples, right? 1 shot is you give it a couple examples and see how the AI does better next time. So we've kind of come up with this 4-shot flow of how really AI in the near future, not even near future now, but like for the next little period of time, until AI does everything, which then this is useless conversation and probably won't happen for a while. But in the intermediate, what do we do to make things better, faster, cheaper, and make sure that humans are engaged in all this, and leverage the expertise of testers? So we have the 4-shot thing. So the first is, so the AI goes out and does a bunch of testing, right? And it finds bugs. A lot of those things will just happen with the AI. The AI will take the output of the testing AI, fix them, and it'll iterate until it can't anymore. And then it'll report the bugs it found and that are remaining, and some quality reports back to the humans, right? So developers get really quick feedback, tight loop on that, because it's all automated and all AI on the basics. But then the human comes in and says, okay, good bug or bad bug. So that's really the 0-shot review. This is when the human comes in and says, hey, what did the robot do? Let me inspect it, right? Let me look at it. Was the robot, did it hallucinate? Is it not important right now, given my team context, my business context? But human reviews it and says, okay, good robot, bad robot. And then only then does it go back to the developer. Now it's been human reviews. Now it's a higher standard of quality evaluation. And then that feedback loop can help make the AI better next time, obviously. So the 1-shot is where the testing experts do their thing that they do today. But rather than spending all their time doing logins and doing searches on the same queries, like creating new accounts over and over and over again, manually or with Java and Python, now guess what they do? They look at all the work, almost like a test manager would, or a great test leader, looks at all the work the AI did, all the results, test cases, test flows, bugs, issues, all that stuff. And then they go, okay, now what am I going to do? So they're going to go, like if there's a bunch of security flags, say there's like HTTP traffic in the sign-in dialog, that's a little sketch. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to go, I'm going to dig around in terms of security in general, because now I don't trust either the AI wrote this code or a human did or both, but like I don't trust that the security stuff is very tight. So I'm going to dig around for security in the sign-in area, but also generally across the app, because it wasn't designed with that. That's my intuition as a smart tester to go, where there's smoke, there's fire. And then I'm also going to look and say, what's missing, right? What didn't the AI do? What didn't I do last time? And then try to add coverage in those areas, giving all of their context and intuition. They are smarter than the robots today, and but they should be doing things that are smarter than the robot. So then there's a second shot, which is the idea here really is to where the human goes in and then reconfigures the AI. So they go back to the AI and they go, okay, we need more regression tests and more. So we're going to build some more regression tests in this kind of sign in password reset area. And they can do that with prompts, right? So they don't have to like write a bunch of code. It can happen almost real time. They can extend the coverage. And then they go and create new AI testing agents with prompts and stuff. And they say, hey, I want you to be a security person super focused on network traffic and basically flag every single thing that's HTTP and not HTTPS, for example. And then you configure the robot for next time, right? So now they said, okay, done. Then next time you get the build, the new binary comes in, the AI does the zero shot again. It does all the automation. It runs these new tests that testers added. And this cycle of life just continues, right? So you get constantly improving coverage, and you also, it's efficient. And the humans that are very expensive, but very smart, are used optimally. And then the machines are used also optimally. So that's, I think, the new flow for how things are going to go as people start to merge these two. And the reason I'm overly sharing it now too, is a lot of teams I talk to, very sophisticated people, go, okay, I've got these AI things, but how do I integrate them in my process? So really that was the origin for this, is like, okay, well, let's actually figure it out with real world teams, real world people, real world AI. And so this is a view of where things are going. So if you need to know how the workflow of the future is, I think this is a very good template to look at. I've written some blog posts with more granular details and stuff. But this is really how humans are going to work with machines in this new world. So given that context, what do we need to do as testers? So how do we survive this kind of coming of age of AI and actually having an impact on what we do? Number one is, and there's just like a bug reported by by an AI, for example. But what's interesting here is actually that little button in the upper right corner. What that is a thumbs up, right? So this is where that human is adding their review. The AI's done all this work, found a bunch of bugs, and then the human goes thumbs up or thumbs down. It's hyper efficient to have the AI do all the work, and the human goes good or bad robot. But here's the problem that we've seen and run into, and is an opportunity for people to be very valuable in this new world, is that the AI can find issues in almost any area of testing and quality, right? Like all the lists on the right-hand side, like privacy, security, accessibility, mobile, user personas, APIs. So the tester now, instead of having to be an expert in pick one of those or a couple of them, they really need to be able to be competent to review the work of an AI across all these different testing domains. So having a lot of experience, but particularly having a broad spectrum of understanding of these issues. And that means you actually understand GDPR, not just what the rules and regulations are too, but like the intent of it. You understand a bit about security. You also understand accessibility and even have empathy for accessibility. But you need to have a very broad range of experience. If you're going to be the person triaging and going good robot, bad robot, you've got to be smarter than the robot. So all the testers that know they're smarter than the AI, we'll see. But I think most everybody, including myself, to be frank, I'm no unicorn. The AI has actually driven me to dig deeper into these areas. And it makes me, a lot of times the bugs come in, I'll be like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I dig into it and go, okay, that makes sense. Now I understand a little bit better. But this is number one advice to survive this apocalypse in the near term, is to be very, very broadly skilled. People talk about prompt engineering. I think it's important. I don't think it's the most important thing, because the AIs are getting smart enough where the prompt isn't the limiting factor. But you need to be able to do basic prompts. Most testers write horrible prompts. 2 quick tips. That's too mechanical maybe, but when you write prompts, make them very long and share as much context as you can, right? Like the ideal prompt in my experience is, 80, 90% of it is just context. My team's doing this. This is the application. Here's some code. Here's my test cases that are in the area, blah, 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 blah. and then you ask your question at the end. But you also ask the question at the end. You don't say, what should I do? You give it a very, if you ask a very sophisticated question, you get a very sophisticated answer. So I guess the way to summarize it. But really, how do you figure out how to get the context into those prompts, especially as the prompts and context windows are getting to, millions of tokens now? You can put a whole lot of context. Everyone's like, oh, the AI doesn't understand my world. Well, now you can actually add the specification, the code, the whatever. Most testers don't know both or have a competent understanding of them, let alone how to apply it. But the AI can now if you give it the context. So I think there's a new term emerging, which is context engineering. I think it's pretty important, more important than prompt engineering for testing. Again, we mentioned before, but how do you look at a broad range of coverage and testing that's happened in bugs and identify what's missing? Like that's the key. And then really, if you think about it, if you are smarter than the AI, you should be able to figure out what it didn't do. And if it knew what it was missing, it would have done it, right? So this is really the hack or the trick here to survive this apocalypse. Is just keep ahead of what is the AI. You have to know what the AI can do, and you can be able to understand and synthesize what the AI did do, which is a lot of work. And instead of realize most test directors today are managers, they look at like the results of most places 50 automated tests, maybe a few hundred, but in the area of AI, you'll have hundreds of bugs and thousands of tests to review, thousands of test coverage, of testing and test coverage. So how do you get the view on all that context? And then how do you identify what's missing? Again, it's even a broader context of testing, not just all the little areas of testing, but it's also understanding like, what is the meaning of all this? And in the scheme of things, like what did the AI and me or other testers not even think of beforehand? So this is kind of like, I think about these people as like, just like special forces, kind of a type person, super experienced, super smart, super humble, and curious. Another one is to understand the users really well. So the AI, you can always imagine how AI is going to creep into these areas, but really understanding user, like go talk to a user. Like you can build a chatbot to talk to users, but like go talk to them, actually ask them what they're trying to do, what their frustrations are. It's actually really easy rather than try to guess and think. So some of the best testers will actually talk to users, human beings on the other end. And then also use analytics or observability, whatever you want to call it, but to see what users are doing in the application and understand where they're getting stuck, where they're getting confused, where the errors are from a DevOps or SRE perspective, where the crashes, where the problems and error messages being surfaced in the app at scale. So really understand the users and personas. Related to earlier about figuring out what's missing, but also it may be funny, it may seem like trite, but I think prioritization is a big thing, because one of the things you're going to have a ton of data, right? We have a lot of tests results, we have a lot of bugs. The question is, how do you know not only what the right thing is, but how do you just stack rank them? Like, what is the first most important thing to fix, second most, third most, fourth most? And it's not just when a person files a bug, they put a priority on it, right? This is all the context and all the understanding of the business and the test cycle and everything. How do you prioritize which bugs should be fixed? Because there'll be so many bugs and so much failing test cases that the team can't usually figure it out themselves. You got to have somebody kind of specializes in this and is trusted. The other thing I think is important is storytelling. So how do you tell, again, like when you think you have the prioritization right, or you think you have, what's missing, how do you communicate that with the team? A lot of testers like to hide in their cubicle all day and speak through Jira. I'm kind of one of those by default, I think. My default mode is that. But really still working with teams of engineers, product managers, and business leaders, we have to communicate all that. And it's going to be more difficult because there's going to be a bunch of AI. People don't understand the AI. They're concerned about it, skeptical about it. Things are moving too fast for them. But you have to build the trust, like we just talked about, from the team. But you have to be able to communicate what that issue is. Like, why is this bug super important to fix? How do you convince them, the humans, that they need to hold off release, for example, to fix this bug? Or, hey, everything says we should fix this bug, but I don't think so. Like, I think it's high enough quality for an incremental release. In worst case, we could roll it back. But you need to get far, far better at storytelling, not just telling people, 72.3% of the tests we happen to have written happen to have passed this cycle. And then 10% of them are flaky, we don't trust. And like just giving people dashboards just won't make sense anymore, because the AI can build a better dashboard and even give better quality summaries than humans. So it's going to be a really very high EQ storytelling modality that testers need to get into. You need to understand bias in AI. So a lot of times people think about bias, I think at a simple level, you think of, oh, it's going to negatively impact different, types of people or whatever. But no, really the bias to worry about, that's true. But even more so, there's bias in AI, like bias toward different programming languages, bias toward finding different types of bugs based on how frequently they were reported in the world or how much everybody else thinks they're important, for example, or styles of types of test cases to generate. So you need to understand bias, and it's a huge field. Like it's a job in itself, but get a good feeling for understanding like why your AI thinks the way it does. A lot of testers, I see at conferences, this is one thing that just drives me nuts. They'll say they'll explain LLMs in 5 minutes or half an hour. And really they shouldn't be talking about it at all, because it's actually just wrong. I highly recommend testers just sit back, watch 3-4 hours of YouTube videos about how LLMs work, and ignore anyone who has a testing title or automation engineer in a title. Just do not listen to them. They're making stuff up. But it's important to know how these things work, because then you understand its weaknesses, you understand its strengths, and you can understand why it does what it does. And that's super important, right? Not just with testing, but now this is a tool, you understand these limitations, but ignore the biased presentations of it. Just go straight to the source. There's a lot of free material on how these things work. And especially if you double click, look into reinforcement learning. That's the trick. That's where all the bad stuff happens, actually, the good and the bad. But look into reinforcement learning. If you don't understand how that works, then you really don't understand. LMs are like the tiny core kernel or something. A lot of it's especially issues related to testing around reinforcement learning. So some controversial quick points is what not to learn, right? And frankly, what's even embarrassing in the world of AI. Like if someone sees you doing some of these things in the world of AI, they're aware, they'll be going like, oh, that person doesn't get it. Like they're not going to be part of this new world order. Like they're opting out. And that's, frankly, I think testing frameworks and page object models. And the very brass tacks reason is that, and you can look around, search the internet, look at computer use, OpenAI's, God, I forget what they call it. There's browser use. There's like all sorts of frameworks for identifying elements in screens, which are like the selector world. And then there's all sorts of agentic and prompt-based ways to make the system click, right? Click through the web page, click on the desktop, take actions. So it's actually extremely old school now, and it's basically deprecated. Most testers don't realize it's been deprecated, but all that work in building like page object models and testing frameworks is quite quaint. And I'll even add into that, by the way, which isn't a little maybe it'll make people uncomfortable, is if you're using AI to generate code, you're doing it wrong, because the AI doesn't need to generate code. And guess what happens if you save the code? Now you have all the problems of Java Selenium world where the application changes, and now you've got code that will just, guess what, break again. So go AI native. But if you're doing these types of things, either internally just know that you're on the wrong track, very, very wrong track. Not even like an opinionated response. It's just you are on the wrong track. And if other people see you doing this stuff, and if they're aware, they're going to look at you funny. Another thing is just test case management systems. Like it's awesome to have thousands of test cases in some repository. It used to be. People would feel good. There's a lot of coverage here, work to do, work done. You're managing your data and test case design, creation, strategy wrong if you're spending almost all your time in a test case management system, especially if it has a tree control to group all the test cases. I should have done that gesture. Now that's recorded. But good luck to you. It's not going to go well. And then another point to note is testers used to be very, I call them wannabe philosophers. I try to be politically correct, but there's people that try to talk about testing either externally because they want to sell tickets to a legacy classroom experience, to learn about testing, or internally because testers think, hey, I do this busy work all day, but I want to look smart and sound smart. So they spend all their time trying to use multi-syllable words, and when you're talking like that, two big things. One is you don't look like you're being productive, and AI is supposed to make you productive, right? So like you should probably be working with the AI and not just mouthing off about theoretical things. And also, you will look smart by doing. Like even in the dev world now, there's some appreciation for some esoteric discussions of different architectures, or Rust versus C++ or something. But you know what? The team doesn't care anymore, because the AI is writing that code, and they're working on things, and like there's not a lot of time. Like if you're talking like this, you're probably not being productive, and you probably don't understand AI, and you probably won't trust or want AI to work for you. So it's just like a bad signal. Something to keep in terms of appearances, even in reality, but also especially in terms of appearances, is not a good look. So where are we going with all this? Basically, there's going to be two worlds, and this world's splitting very soon. There's going to be people that hunker down, want to just have food stores supplied, stored in bins, eat dehydrated food, and have barrels of water that they collect from the ceiling from the humidity of their own breathing to survive underground after this bomb's gone off, right? But guess what? It's not a long-term strategy, and it probably won't last that long. So I highly recommend people in this metaphor escape to the surface. There's radiation. It's concerning. There's a lot of chaos. The machines and people are working together and sometimes fighting, and it's a little bit of chaos. But those people are going to survive, and they're also the ones that are going to thrive in this new world. Things are accelerating. That means there's going to be more software to build, much more software to test, and a lot of quality issues. And the world's becoming software. Like software powers the world now. So the world even wants quality more than ever, and needs it more than ever. So those people will do very well, but I really genuinely think it's going to be politely an 80-20, 90-10 split. Most testers, specifically because of personalities, what brought them into the field, like they think that being negative and skeptical is a skill somehow. And they found these false positives, and these local minima, where they get stuck in them. That's not actually what people care about. It's just they don't want to deal with you, and they just want you to go do the testing. But if you think like that, you're going to be stuck underground, and there's going to be not much escape. And by the time if you do decide to pop up later, adopt it later, a lot of people are just literally even saying, I'm just going to use it later when it's all figured out. There won't be room in the inn. There's not going to be enough seats. And people have been working 5-10x better and faster. And they won't want to work with the people that took a year and a half, 2 years to figure it out, because the world's moving too fast. So a quick thing, if you want to play with AI testing agents, and you call it an inline ad or something, but it's really not. It's frankly, I want to make sure people understand that this is real today. So for free, you can actually get AI testing agents, and people have done it that are non-technical. You download an app, you run a command line, and the big question is what URL you want it to point it to, and it can go off and start doing all that testing, find bugs, generate tests, and execute them. So if you want, like within less than an hour, get a test report that's automated and done completely by AI, you can do it today, and you can see what AI can and can't do. So I generally recommend that just as a human being. It's cost me money, actually. So it's probably not very bright of me, because even by default, like I pay for all the AI tokens. People don't have their own tokens. So be gentle with it. But I want the community to be able to experience it and see what AI can do today. But it's not this huge, long process. It's really 10 minutes to get it kicked off, and about an hour to finish at max. And you can get hundreds and hundreds of test cases for a single web page that are executed, and 10, 20 bugs. Free bugs. Why does it, if a tester doesn't want free bugs found for them by an AI, like that they can take credit for and file and juror under their name, like it's not going to go well. There's also Iceberg QA. So if people need to add AI, this is what me and Phil are working on, is we're actually marrying the AI with the expert human. So if you just want testing services that are done that are as efficient as possible using the latest AI and latest techniques, how to blend humans and machines to be better, faster, and more efficient, check out Iceberg QA. We share what our process is and our learnings. But like for people that don't want to run AI themselves or aren't technical enough or don't care, they just want testing to get done. That's a way you can find on our webpage how it works and do it yourself, or you can just have people do it for you. And then I'll leave it with this. This is really where the future is going, is that the AI coding agents will do a bunch of code with a little bit of prompting from the developers, but most of the 80% of the code, like if you looked earlier, like 20-25% of the code at like Google and Microsoft and such are written by AI. Like it's happening. If you're in denial or whatever, and it's going up, the percentages are going up. So very soon, the vast majority of code will be written by AI. It's just better, faster, and cheaper. But then the AI testing agents will test that automatically too. So these AI testing agents will work in this little virtuous loop, which we used to think was this whole big loop that included a lot of humans and process. But the AI is going to do that very, very quickly amongst themselves. And then humans are going to be what I call they're exceptional humans, which is a good way to put it, but they're the exception handler. So all the basic stuff that the AI agents can't do themselves, they'll stop and realize, oh, okay, I can't fix this bug, or, oh, I can't find any more issues. And they'll say, humans come in and help us. But you've got to be a strong tester, a really strong QA person that can handle all that ambiguity, understand what the AI did, understand what it didn't do, and communicate that with the team, right? That's a lot of work. So 80-90%, genuinely, it's even higher than that, I think, in just a very short while. But the majority of coding and testing will be done by AI testing agents and coding agents. The question is, how do you become that exception handler, become an exceptional exception handler for the process that's emerging today? And most of that process will happen in the IDE. So, but if you don't, here's the dire warning I'll say at the end, the big motivational thing here. If this doesn't motivate you, then I don't know what to do. I'm trying, is if testers do not, I almost want to get like pound a podium or something, but if testers do not adopt AI now, like now is almost too late. If you are not AI first and real serious about it, it's going to be real trouble coming up very soon, like career-wise and comfort-wise. Because if you don't do it, it's not like somebody else is going to do it in the testing world. It's going to be the developers. If you don't go to your developer now and say, hey, I've got an AI first approach to testing and we're going to do it and we're doing it now. And they go, oh, okay, cool. You do the AI thing and testing thing for me. They'll just look for the AI testing agents and they'll be doing the testing themselves because it's faster and they're in a tighter loop with the code and the bugs. And you'll just get fewer bills to test because you're going to be too slow and kind of expensive, relatively speaking. So highly recommend come up with an AI first approach to doing your testing today. Not you use it here and there and you dabble and you're learning, but I'm saying you're using it today to be proactive. And there's no excuse today. You can download a thing, get AI results today. There's processes and things figured out and defined on how you can integrate with machines and humans to do better testing and at least have a story and actually be having some value with AI first approach today. If you don't, I tried. Genuinely, I tried. So anyway, enough of that. But the future is awesome. Can you imagine where we don't have to finally, we always had this promise of automation where it'll do all the hard stuff and then humans can do all the deep thinking, right? That's always been this fantasy and never a reality. I actually think it's possible now. And it's because AI is not just automation. It's because AI can do the automation and it can do basic reasoning. It may not be conscious yet, but it can do a lot of things. It knows how a text box is supposed to work. It knows how a search box is supposed to work. It knows code better than 99% of humans on the planet. Unless you're a special unicorn. And by the way, there's no unicorns in this picture. I'll just leave it at that. There are no unicorns in this picture. If you have any questions or you need help or want to follow up or whatever, I'm available on LinkedIn and I'm happy to be helpful. And I'm also happy to be mocked and because it won't matter soon. Anyway, thank you. I'm Jason Arbon and thanks for your time today. I hope it was useful and not too scary. But there's a lot of ways to survive the apocalypse. You just got to be proactive about it.
Thanks so much. It was very, very nice. We have a few questions there for you, but first, that's the good thing being a host. So when you are the host, you are the one who can make the first question. So a few days back, we have also a AgileTD after work with Manu Quinn, and he said that in his opinion, he said that the numbers of developers are going to decrease because the agents will do a lot more and they are more quicker. And the number of testers are going to increase because you will have a lot of output and you will need all these people handle all the exceptions and look at that. So in his opinion, so like you said, testers need to get trained and they need to have the knowledge, but you're going to need more testers than developers. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think if you grep the internet, I might have passed that general kind of meme off earlier, but it's missing context. So it gets passed around as this like good, as this great white hope, right? There's truth in it, but not in the analysis, I think. So I don't think I think it's wrong in the sense that that the AI will generate a bunch more code. And by the way, it's not as good as engineering code, normal engineering code. So yeah, there's going to be a lot more code, a lot more product to test, and it's going to be worse code. By the way, to be clear, I agree with all those things. The premise of that. What I don't agree with is that there would be more demand for testing and quality. The problem is only the testers that are also enabled by AI can keep up. If you have, like, look at the real, the real deal today. If you've ever met a tester that says, "Oh yeah, my test automation and manual testing we're totally good. We got enough coverage now. We're good. We're happy." It doesn't even happen today. So when you give those same people 10 times the amount of work to do, it's not going to scale, right? So I think there's going to be far more demand, but only the people that are powered by AI that can genuinely 5x their productivity can keep up and are needed. So there'll be a lot more demand for testing and quality. The people but this is what I feel very passionate about. The people that are using AI first and are accelerating themselves and jumping in to this AI first world will be in higher demand than we've ever seen. Because they'll be super, but you're not going to. You can't hire 10 times the number of manual testers. It doesn't even economically work. And you can't hire, and you don't want to hire, 10 times the number of Selenium. I'm sorry, you can never invite me back. But the Selenium Java engineers, like, you just don't want more of those flaky tests and code that are expensive and take months to develop, and all your time is spent on maintenance. There'll be a far higher demand, but I genuinely think only maybe 20% of people will make this transition. And that's the concern I have. So there'll be far more demand for testers, but I don't think as many of them will be relevant or applicable in that new world. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay. So we have, I will put the question on the screen. You can read it so that you can answer that. Mm-hmm. So let's see.
Well, that's fancy.
Sorry?
That's like super legit. This is like better than CNN. Testing multi-agent AI system that has workflows and tools at disposal. Okay, that's a lot in there. By the way, I do consulting. This is like a week's worth of an answer. I'm kidding. So one is, I'll say this though, there's some studies, so forget me, my opinion. People think I'm just AI fanboy. By the way, I live with the pain every day of what AI doesn't do. It sucks. But no one wants to talk about that. So the reality is that most, so there's some papers, I think some from OpenAI and some from, it's relevant, Berkeley, if you want to look it up. They have a Center for Human Compatible AI or something. I think it's a center. They published a paper, and what they did is they compared humans with LLMs for, in terms of validating things, just validating facts. And a weird thing happened is, so 12 months ago, this paper came out, maybe 10 months ago. And the AI is actually better, more predictable, and more reliable and accurate than the humans are at evaluating the output of AI and facts in general. Now, you may have a human specialist that in this one little vertical is far better, but for the vast majority of all tasks, AI has actually become better and more reliable than humans to evaluate the output of a system, even if it's an LLM. I do highly recommend, I do this with testers AI stuff, is we also do have, I spend all my time, I gave a talk at AICon a couple of weeks ago about this, and I'm happy to share more about that, but we spend all of our time here is trying to test and check the AI, which is a multi-agent system. So really, this is how we test the multi-agent testing system. It's very, very meta, right? How do you test the system to test that's agents? And the real answer is you have to run it on real-world systems because all the edge cases are with real-world systems. It's not actually the theory or theoretically that, what could happen or in the space of all possible page configurations. There's enough problems that you need another LLM to double check the results of one LLM, and even another agent to check the results of another agent. So I would think about it classically. Actually, I've never shared this before. I think it's super important is think about the agents not as a team first. Testers usually want to test from the outside in. There's so much chaos between workflow and orchestrations and the state of the system that I would actually go back to basics and test the basic building blocks. Test the AI engines independently, test them with mock agents, and induce interesting workflows for the orchestration kind of agentic system, and then have some end-to-end tests at the end of the day. But I think just like the classic pyramid, do most of the testing at the lower level, because if that stuff is broken, the entire system is not going to work well. And when it does break, you won't be able to debug and down to any reliable foundation of software. But generally speaking, it's a very chaotic world, and we're figuring it out, I guess is the real answer. But it's a good idea to use LLMs to cross-check each other, absolutely.
Okay, so the next question is from Brian Jones.
What is the scale of the apps that you are talking about? Have you done this at scale of enterprise apps rather than mobile and website? First of all, this is the classic, I'm going to be very frank. This is someone going, it's not going to take my job because I work on very complex enterprise systems. So to be clear, I've worked on some complex systems such as Google Search, Bing, Windows, BizTalk server. I get it. I totally get it. The answer is that the AI doesn't do everything today, 100%. But almost every one of these enterprise applications has APIs. And by the way, look at Postman's AI stuff. It's actually fantastic to test APIs. But it will do a large swath of the testing. So if you're dealing with an enterprise app, guess what AI doesn't do really well today? Which the intuition of the question is right. But I think that they're trying to look for a conclusion that they want to hear. It does horribly at, like, if you're doing tax calculations, like is that the correct tax that was calculated? You can go, hey, that looks right, probably right, or you can hard code for this exact scenario, but then you're hard coding again, right? It doesn't have access to business logic on the back end, generally speaking. It's not good at figuring that out. The context windows have to be huge to understand not only the code, but the data, right? That's the key limitation. That's where testers should focus on is these kind of back-end enterprise things. But you use AI to do a lot of your basic API validation and testing, like with the Postman stuff. You can use end-to-end AI testing agents to make sure that all your UI basically works as a user would expect it in almost all the basic flows. So we can do a large majority of the testing. And that's where the testers belong, is always the AI does the stuff, and they come in and go, what did the AI not do? Oh, it doesn't know how to text. I want to I have a hard-coded grid matrix of the tax rates in every state and city and locale in the world. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to run through every single one of those because it has to be right. That's exactly what a tester should be doing. But it doesn't mean they shouldn't be using the AI stuff. I think a lot of times people are using those kind of questions to go like, oh, okay, I'll wait 6 months, or it'll never take my job or whatever. But the funny thing is those very same people are not usually testing the basics very well, to be frank. So there's truth in that, but I think it's a leading question.
There's a follow question on that. So
it's a follow up to the leading question. This is just this is like a too ambiguous a question to answer. It's how long before. First of all, I won't say how long it'll take to do anything because nobody actually knows, and even the experts in the space keep changing their estimates all the time. But by the way, they're moving their estimates up. It's getting faster than even they were kind of ambitiously thinking. But I will say this: one of the last bastions and safe places for testers is absolutely like on enterprise apps. Like if you're doing an SAP testing SAP instances or Salesforce instances or some internal banking thing, by the way, the COBOL engineers there still have a job and are paid more than anybody. So they'll be the
I learned COBOL many years ago. I learned COBOL.
Yeah.
But I forgot already. So I already learned
we'll edit that out in post. Yeah.
Okay.
but I want to say that all the enterprisey stuff you're worried about and stressed about, it's probably going to be the last thing to go. But when it does go, it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. And how fast that happens, I'll say this. I get excited about these topics. We could talk forever on these things, but what'll happen is not what you think it is. Like usually you think about systems integration of these enterprise apps and testing everything end to end, and deep thinking on like what are the fields or flows that could cause an exception or break things, and future values that don't even exist that might be entered into such a system that could cause a problem, and security and things. But the reality is that the AI is you're going to be attacked from an angle you don't realize. You think you're waiting for the AI to do all the things that you do, but the AI doesn't work like you. It's AI and it's a machine. So what's going to happen is the developers that are working on that legacy COBOL, guess what? They're going to pass that COBOL through the AI and ask it to find any bugs. They're going to pass more and more with RAG, and eventually we have infinite context windows coming soon. You can just pass your entire database to literally serialize it, put it into an LLM, and then maybe you wait 5 days and it costs $10,000, but you say, hey, find all the data, the probabilistic data or future bugs that I don't even think about that might be latent in this design or implementation, and just let it chew through both the code and the data for a day. So it'll be tested from the bottoms up. So your job won't be, the machine comes in and does what you do, which you think is very difficult. It'll actually be the developer, develop from the developer side and kind of bottoms up. I think that those systems will become far more robust, and most of that testing will be done. It won't be a direct replacement of what enterprise kind of app testers do today.
Okay. There is a comment from Chris Fu, and I think we should have that.
There's a what?
This from Chris Fu. There's a comment.
Okay, Chris. Yeah, Chris. I thought you said that. I thought you were saying something philosophical for a second. Yeah, it's Chris. Yeah, I know Chris. What's something I could do? I can't look at the customer in the eye and figure out exactly what the problem is. Okay, real quick though, I love Chris. But he's also a super tester. And has anyone heard of facial recognition? Has anybody heard of looking at a human's face and asking it to figure out the person's emotional state? If there's white papers on the search, Chris, I love you. Search probably does a better job than you. Literally, the data is available. It's open source data from papers. Test yourself against the AI's ability to recognize emotional state in a user. Also, I've heard a rumor, a lot of these machines actually have a webcam on them facing the user. And also the AI knows it has a degree essentially in psychology. Like you don't. That's why I'm picking on him, because he's a buddy. But you don't. So that's probably a very damn good business idea, to be frank. But I think it's actually very, very plausible that it would be far better than Chris, who is a smart, experienced tester and has been thinking about AI for a long time. But ironically, the things that are sound the most difficult to people and testers, usually the easiest things to solve. And I do this with the tester stuff. I have agents. We create user personas, and then we ask them their opinion about the website. So for like a travel site, you say, create users for this website, and we'll go and create, older ladies that travel alone, that have a giant purse with their little baby dog in it, and they only travel with their dog and their pet, right? So that's a whole different travel experience, right? The hotels, cars, everything's got to be dog friendly, right? And it's very important to this person. They spend a lot of money on the site. They don't care about discounts. So it's all their margin. So they really have to take care of this person. Well, the AI can not only create that persona, but can give feedback and say, hey, I don't see, it'd be great if there was a tab here that just says dog friendly, right? And then that state persists on every vertical experience I have for cars, trains, planes, whatever, that it maintains that dog preference, for example. But the AI is better at thinking of those things and even providing emulating the feedback. And I actually even think if you had a picture of the lady's face, it would probably do a better job than Chris in determining the psychology and emotional state of them using the application. I really do.
Okay. We have a very nice question from Brian.
That range of triage issues, I would expect any good quality test professional to know enough about triage. So Brian's obviously an experienced tester. I suggest you get out in the real world and talk to real testers. Most of them, by the way, don't go to conferences. They don't blog. They don't talk on LinkedIn. They're just working. So I don't agree with that, that that's true. I do think that junior testers, ironically, a lot of people think that AI is going to to elevate, make this the junior tester super powerful now, right? Because they can just prompt and ask for something. But no, what really happens, it's happening in the dev world. By the way, I went to a Cursor meetup of all things last night, pretty nerdy. And I listened to all the conversation. In fact, I'm so nerdy, I walked the people attending and listening to them while they're eating pizza and what they're talking about. And because I'm a real stealth kind of spy guy. It's hard. I just blend into crowds real easy. And but almost all the chatter, right, was about, oh, I get into this situation and I get stuck. Or, hey, the AI created this whole thing, like it used this library I don't know, or it, then they go, well, just tell it not to use that library. Like it's actually usually the lack of human experience and context knowledge that causes the problem with AI. So I don't think it'll elevate junior. I think it will do most of the junior work. In fact, it's already doing it, and you require to be the best testers in this new world will be very experienced and broadly capable testers. And there's not many of those by definition. And a lot of those even leave the field. This is a big thing that stresses me out. A lot of the competent people move into management and become useless, or they leave and try to become a PM or something like that, or they just always want to be a developer and they just want to write Java all day. But yeah, I think it's the opposite of what a lot of people think.
Okay, thanks so much. So just to let you know that Brian is going to have also AgileTD after work in a few days. So if you wanted to look at that, what he's telling about this could be great.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So the last question. So there are many people saying thanks so much for the great talk and so on. And we have a last question from Crystal. She was also keynote at the Agile Testing Days, I think 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, Crystal. I saw her at the TechCrunch Disrupt or the TechCrunch event so long ago. Sorry, I just want to say, I'm a super fan of Crystal. So this is a biased response. I'm actually a little flustered because I'm, I miss her. She actually cared about testing and the people and testers. So now I'm scared to read it. Thanks for sharing what you're building. Many of the enterprises work with are actually hesitant to enable AI features. Yeah. Yes. So that is the question of the day from like a business perspective, not just in testing, right, but in general. People worried about their data sharing and privacy. They've been worried about that for like 6 months ago. I think people are calmed down around that. The real answer at the end of the day is you can run offline on your own machine. So IT departments kind of chill if you can do that. If you can run locally. So that's why we've designed our code to be not cloud, by the way. I started writing it with cloud, and then I realized there's IT and now AI review panels and policy people are coming up. Then they want to review all the prompts that you have too. It's like getting very uncomfortable. But if you can run local and you don't have any pings offsite, you can run on premise. And especially if you can tell these people, hey, it'll work with Azure versus like an OpenAI key, or they don't really trust OpenAI, frankly. Google, yeah, but really they trust Azure because they already have their data on Azure a lot of times. So if you can tell them, or even sometimes Amazon, but you can really tell them, hey, we can connect to your Azure private instance for your LLMs. They just by default leave it. If they didn't trust that, they'd have to kick Microsoft out of all their IT. So they will generally trust that. I think there's another, so that's just the basics in terms of data and privacy kind of things. I think that, and there's still always, even if people fully understand things, so I don't want these guys training on my data. So the third party, they also don't want you to intercept their data and learn from it. So at first you think, oh, this AI company should be learning from my interactions with it. No. It's a dangerous thing. So we deliberately just do not want to know where you run, what you do, like in the privacy of your own home. I don't want to know what goes on because I don't even want the hint that we might be using your data or learning from it or learning from your IP interactions to make other companies better. Even though it's like a promise of AI, I completely avoid that. And then lastly, people just, everyone's executed a ChatGPT prompt and got the wrong answer, right? And a lot of it's poisoned by the early days when the AI wasn't that bright and it would hallucinate all the time. It doesn't do it as often. And like I said earlier, a good question about how do you test things? You use multiple LLMs, they cross-check each other. There's a lot of extra work to make these things reliable, but people don't still fundamentally trust AI in the system because it's not as predictable. They can't quantify it. It changes underneath them and they don't know what could happen. They always worry about what could happen and you can't ever tell them that it won't. Like, with the right prompt, the right customer input, things can go awry. So yeah, I think she nailed it on the head. Trust is multi-vectors is the biggest issue from a business perspective and an adoption perspective today. And I think the world's still just trying to figure that out. In my world, I try to make things on-prem, totally offline. I don't want to ever see your prompts or be able to see them. Is one. Two is let them use their own LLM to whatever degree their IT people are comfortable with. And then lastly is just proof through just the reliable execution is just to do the work. And they can look at the output and compare it with what they're doing today and go, oh, okay, yeah, the AI makes mistakes, but like 5% of the time. The funny thing is, I think Chris will appreciate this. No one in testing, we're testers supposedly. What's the error rate of human testers? Like when they go through a test pass, like we would applause, we would do overlap with U-test. Like we'd have two people do the same test. Even in the training and make sure that they're legit testers, we would have overlap on purpose to see what multiple votes would say. And we'd only believe the majority vote because we don't trust humans inherently either. But no one's really quantified the difference between humans and very much like self-driving cars. Like, humans, I've been in 3 accidents, horrible accidents, and my fault, like 2 of them. I'm not a good driver. I still drive, right? That Tesla across the street that I almost keep backing into all the time in the morning, that Tesla is probably, in my case, probably 20 times safer a driver. But guess what? I still like to drive. So I think ultimately, even the stats, I don't think we can even prove it with statistics because they aren't there. And even if we had them, testers still like to test, and automation engineers still like to write automation code. So, but trust is the key issue. She nailed it.
Jason, thanks so much. It was great.
Thanks for tolerating me.
Yeah, I mean, anytime. We have some surprises, but we don't tell anything now.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much. It was great. As you know, this is recorded, so we are going to, you can find it and link it in, but also we are going to put it in YouTube in our channel so that you can have a look at there. As you know, the AgileTD after work takes place almost 2-3 times a week. Tomorrow we have Karim Salomon about talking again the idea behind Agent AI for QA. So if you are there, take your time. It's about 5 o'clock in the evening, on the afternoon in Germany. So thanks so much. Take care and see you the next time.
Yeah,
right?
Cool. Thank you. Cheers. Appreciate it.
Yeah.